Cathedral of the Holy Cross, Assassin's Creed. The biggest landmark in Acre is this almost unreasonably large Crusader church, which poses one of the hardest platforming challenges in the game. But the history of this landmark is complex and enigmatic. There was a vast church built by Crusaders in the city that was destroyed in 1291, 100 years after the game takes place. But nobody knows what the church was called or even what it looked like, since our records of it only pertain to its ruins, which stood in the city for hundreds of years. Eventually, a new church was built on the site, the Church of St. Andrew, which still exists today. However, the representation of the church in Assassin's Creed is wrong, since in real life it was built a little too early to utilize the Gothic architectural style it has in the game. Heracleion, Assassin's Creed Origins.
Bayek, you arrive at an opportune time.
Cleopatra.
Though Alexandria is the biggest city you visit in Origins, Heracleion is where Cleopatra makes her base. Directly east of Alexandria along the banks of the Mediterranean, the city was in a precarious position because it was built on the mouth of the River Nile. Earthquakes and flooding eventually sank it into the sea, where the city remained famously lost until its rediscovery in the year 2000. It's already suffering from major flooding when Origins takes place, but is still occupied when Cleopatra plots to oust her brother and, allied with Caesar, take the throne of Egypt back for herself.
Dionysian town, and unearth the plot against us.
The Devil's Acre, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Is your dog quite alright?
Oh, Desmond's fine.
In the second half of the 19th century, slum clearance efforts began in the UK, with the capital's major slums being largely demolished. One of the more notorious slums was the Devil's Acre, located in the heart of the otherwise extremely affluent area of Westminster. That's the same part of London where you'll find Buckingham Palace and the Houses of Parliament. It was a particular concern of Charles Dickens, though by the 1870s it had been mostly destroyed. You can visit the Devil's Acre and many other slums in Assassin's Creed Syndicate. There's even a mission where Jacob Fry takes Marianne Disraeli, wife of British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, on a tour of the dangerous slum at her request.
So this is a pint, is it?
Notre Dame de Paris, Assassin's Creed Unity. This world-famous cathedral does still exist, but if you go today, it's not the same as it was in Unity's version in 2014. That's because almost 5 years after the game released, a major fire broke out in the building. Major restoration works soon began, and interestingly, the research Ubisoft conducted for Unity was offered as help. It might take decades to repair Notre Dame, but until then, Unity's loving recreation of the building can be enjoyed by all. Other Parisian landmarks that appear in Unity include the Tuileries Palace next to the Louvre, which was burned down 100 years after the game takes place, as well as the Bastille, destroyed in 1790. It's actually a major anachronism that the Bastille remains in the game throughout, since it was destroyed so early in the Revolution. Prison Hulks, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
So this is where Jack keeps his quarry. Let's see if Jack is paying a visit to his captives.
The British Empire made use of prison hulks for centuries, in both its colonies and back in England. These were ships that usually had their masts and sails removed so that they couldn't be sailed anywhere, but could be moored and used to house convicts. One notorious hulk was HMS Jersey, used in New York in the 18th century and visited by Connor in Assassin's Creed 3. But two more historic hulks appear in Syndicate's Jack the Ripper DLC, moored in Deptford on the River Thames. Though we can safely say that in real life, it's doubtful that these old ships were being used as a secret hideout for Jack the Ripper and his gang.
I need to get into the main prison and find the chief warder before he hangs another man for Jack's entertainment.
New York City, Assassin's Creed Rogue.
Let it be known that Morgan Thomas has been found guilty.
Like Notre Dame, New York City of course still exists, but it certainly doesn't look the way it looks in Rogue, or even the way it looks in Assassin's Creed 3. When Connor visits the Big Apple, he arrives shortly after the 1776 Great Fire of New York, where about a quarter of the city burned to the ground. Rogue took us over 20 years back in time to see New York when it was still a British colony and relatively peaceful during the 7 Years' War. One notable landmark is Trinity Church, which was destroyed in the fire but is still standing proud in Rogue. The third iteration of this church went on to be the tallest building in America for over 20 years. Derinkuyu Underground City, Assassin's Creed Revelations. This actually isn't the only underground city found in Cappadocia in Turkey, but it is the largest and most elaborate, potentially once being home to 20,000 people. Used to protect large groups from hostile armies, the cities were occupied sporadically over the last 2,800 years, not abandoned until the 1920s. The city Ezio visits in Revelations isn't one-to-one with Derinkuyu, since instead of narrow tunnels and small rooms, Ezio finds himself in a vast chamber occupied by Templars and what remains of the Byzantines. The tunnels do still exist and are now tourist attractions, but gone are the days when tens of thousands of people could thrive underground.
We fight to restore peace to this troubled land.
Templars are always quick to talk of peace, but very slow to concede power.
The statue of Zeus at Olympia, Assassin's Creed Origins.
Unbelievable craftsmanship. Much better than the statue in Catalonia.
Hopefully one day, all of the 7 wonders of the ancient world will be recreated in Assassin's Creed, but we currently only have 3 of them, and one of those, the Great Pyramid of Giza, still exists. But in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, if you journey to Elise, you'll eventually find this famous temple and its enormous statue of Zeus. Though the most impressive statue of Zeus in the game is the one in Kephallonia at the beginning, that statue didn't actually exist, while the one in Olympia certainly did. It stood from the 5th century BC to the 6th century AD, over 1,000 years before being destroyed. Though, interestingly, scholars still aren't sure what really happened to it. The Great Library of Alexandria, Assassin's Creed Origins.
As no descriptions are available, the team's rendition of the Library of Alexandria was inspired by the visuals of the Library of Chalcis at Ephesus.
One of the greatest losses of human knowledge and learning was the destruction of the Great Library of Alexandria. Interestingly, it's not clear how it was actually destroyed. We know at least part of it was burned down by Caesar in the 1st century BC, but it was in fact rebuilt. But it eventually declined completely. We don't know where the scrolls it housed ended up, and it's certainly been gone from Alexandria for over 1,000 years, with some records suggesting it was finally destroyed by Muslims in the 7th century. But in Assassin's Creed Origins, the library is still a landmark and a major center of learning in the Mediterranean. You can also go and see the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which was another of the 7 wonders of the ancient world until its ruin in the 14th century. Baghdad, Assassin's Creed Mirage. Like New York, Baghdad still exists today, and remains the capital city of Iraq. But Baghdad has been destroyed so many times over the centuries that almost none of the architecture seen in Mirage still exists. It was almost entirely destroyed during the Mongol invasion in the 13th century, during a 13-day siege in which the city was razed and its occupants murdered. The entirety of the round city, which in Mirage is the heart of the city and where the royal palace is found, has been completely lost. Ubisoft went to painstaking lengths to try and recreate Baghdad as it would have been at the height of the Islamic Golden Age. Let us know in the comments which of these lost landmarks is your favorite to explore.
This library is for serious scholars only.
Do you agree with our picks? Don't forget to stick around and check out our other videos on MojoPlays.